Ariel and Torrin, you'll see just exactly the predatory nature of Dahvie Vanity. We also have with us tonight Mal Levy, who you'll remember from last week, another Dahvie Vanity survivor who, since our interview, has been delving into this case and talking to a lot of other victims herself today, in contact with law enforcement, as have many other survivors been in the last week. It's been a very, very active week in this case, and we'll get into that right now. I want to start with Ariel. Ariel, set the scene for me at this particular venue in Colorado, not too far from Denver. What was it called, and what was it all about? Was it a common place for you to hang out?
Yeah, this was a venue called Life Spot. It was right next to a high school, and pretty much just a whole bunch of high school kids always hung out there. Like, during the day, it was just a cool place with computers and video games. We'd all just chill, go on MySpace, just do our thing. I didn't go to this high school. I was farther away, but I liked hanging out with these kids. And at night, they would have live shows, mostly local bands, sometimes bigger bands, but mostly local. And I try to go to all these shows. And but this venue was almost exclusively underage kids. Like, they didn't even sell alcohol. They just had like monsters and snacks and stuff.
So this was designed basically for kids who are 14, 15, 16 years old, and you yourself were 16 at the time, back in, what was it, 2012?
Yeah, we're all about like 12 to 18. I was 16. This was 2009.
And did you know who Dahvie Vanity was? Did you know anything about Blood on the Dance Floor, or was it just, hey, there's a concert at this place and we're going to go just as we would for any other show that was there? It was something to do.
Yeah, I was a fan of Blood on the Dance Floor because I love the style of the band. I thought, I was all into the hair and everything, wanted to have the look. As we all know, the music was terrible, but I was like, well, this is okay because we're all supposed to like it, but I thought it was still kind of fun. So yeah, I was a fan. I was very excited for this show.
And when you attended the concert, did you go with an adult, a parent, a guardian, or just kids because it was a kid's place and folks thought it was okay and safe for you to go there?
I had my mom drop me off. I told her I was meeting another friend there. And, as long as I'm, like, meeting someone she knows about, like, that's good. And, like, she's taken me to this venue many times. It's supposed to be, safe place. It's all us kids and stuff.
And when you get there, what's the scene? The line is there to get into the venue. What's happening?
Yeah, there's a line out back. We all the kids wait in line, go upstairs to the place where we normally hang out during the day, and there's a stage for the bands and everything.
And how did you first come into contact with Dahvie Vanity? How did this go down?
We were all hanging out, waiting for Blood on the Dance Floor to arrive, and at a certain point, I guess he just shows up. As people said, he's got the thing where he likes to hang out in the crowd before the shows, talk to people. So he was there, and everyone started swarming him. And we're all talking to him, like, excited. I'm like, oh, hi, I don't know who had a marker. I guess he was doing autographs. I didn't have anything for him to sign. I was like, I need an autograph, and I had big cleavage at the time. He signed my boob.
So as a 16-year-old, you were starstruck. You thought it was a cool thing, and he signs his name on your chest.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think as bad. At the time, the culture is just everyone just kind of being like that. Did you think that was suggestive in any way, or was you just being a kid? Oh yeah, somewhat. I didn't think it was too inappropriate. Like, at this time, I didn't know his age.
So what is the conversation after that between you and Dahvie Vanity? It would seem like the concert's getting revved up, that he'd be busy and wanting to get on and get together with the band to get ready to do the show. Yeah, so like I told you about, I had this other friend on MySpace who was also in Colorado who had been to a show the night before, and she's all telling me like, oh, I got to meet Dahvie Vanity, it was so cool, he gave me a kiss. I'm like, oh wow, that sounds so neat. And this is the part I'm just so embarrassed about, but I was 16, I wanted attention, wanted the clout. I'm like, hey Dahvie, can I have a kiss? Because I thought that'd be kind of cool, because I thought he was cool. But what happens here, he's like,
oh, yeah, okay. Yeah? Yeah, I thought I was just gonna get a little peck and run away and be like, hee. But what really happened, he was like, come with me. So,
He said, come with me.
yeah, he's like, let's go over here. I'm like, whoa, okay, this is kind of weird. I thought it'd just be a quick whatever. But, so he walks me out, back down the stairs that lead into the venue, and we go outside, and I'm like, what are we doing? And he's like asking me all these questions about myself, make me comfortable, being all nice and stuff. Just we're walking around, and he asked me how old I am, and I say I'm 16. How old are you? And he's like, how old do you think I am? And I'm like, I 20, 21. He's like, yeah, you're right. And I'm like, that's not a big age difference. And then we keep going all the way to his car, and this is where I start to get like really nervous. Normally, this is where I just, if it was some other guy, I'd freak out, turn around, and be like, no, me. But I'm like, oh, it's Dobby Vanity. What are we doing, though? So I get in his car, and he drives across the street. And I'm like, this is getting super weird.
So this goes from lining up to go see a concert to meeting a celebrity in your mind to getting his autograph on your chest, what you thought would be a quick peck. And then when he sees that you may have an interest in him, even though you're 16 and clearly look to be underage, he hauls you away in his car?
Yeah, it wasn't the best judgment on my part, but, you know, we just kind of had a way of making me feel like, oh, this is okay, you know.
And did it seem weird to you at the time that here's a guy who's supposed to be doing a concert any minute, and he's got you in his car driving you across the street to another parking lot?
It was super weird. I thought he, like, had something to be doing, sound check, getting ready, I don't know, like, don't you have a show to do? But basically I was like, it's not like we can go too far. He has a show to do. It's not like he can murder me, right?
So you're in the car with him, and what is he saying? What is he doing?
I don't really remember the conversation, but all he really did was just drive across the street to a closed Chipotle, and I guess we're still just having like normal conversation, getting his, you know, just trying to make me comfortable with everything. And he's like, so you want a kiss? I'm like, yeah. And then he just, you know, pretty much just starts aggressively making out with me. I'm like, oh, this is more than a kiss, okay. And he moves on to feel me up, grab my chest. He's like saying kind of creepy stuff, like, oh, you have nice boobies. I'm like, okay. And then he starts, you know, grabbing my hand, putting it in his lap. He's erect, you know, rubbing against it. I'm like, not wanting to do that. And he keeps pulling my hand back, pulling it back, and just like, hey, I don't want to do all of this. And he's like, oh, I wish you could be my girlfriend. You know, he's like saying all these things he thinks that I want to hear, telling me that I should be his girlfriend. I'm like, you don't live here. How would that work? And I don't really remember much else of what he said, but you know, he kept trying to get me to do stuff. And after I continually was like, nope, can't do it, pulling away, he just, you know, completely changed from being all fun and sweet to just like really mean and shitty, and just made me feel totally ashamed for the whole thing, and you feel bad for not giving him what he wanted. I just
Which
felt
is
like
the
so guilty.
psychology of a 16-year-old girl at the time. You start to feel, even though you were being targeted for something you didn't want to do, you started to feel guilty that this guy, who was a celebrity in your eyes, was disappointed and mad at you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I felt super guilty and ashamed, and like I did him wrong. And even after like everything else happened, I felt, oh, this is all my fault. I felt so bad that it was my fault he went to jail. You know, that's where my mind was at the time. Like I did something totally wrong.
So what was it that you had to do to finally convince him to drive you back to the venue? Was it just a matter of him having to get on stage and perform? Did you have to get aggressive and to say, look, this isn't what I want to do, take me back?
I don't remember too well how I did get it to stop. Like, I was like, don't you have a show to do? Don't you need to get back? You need to get back soon, right? You're gonna go on soon, right? And he's just kind of like, won't really talk to me, kind of like silent treatment, just like, just making me feel like crap. But he did take me back, and then once he got back, just ditched me right away. Didn't even walk back with me, just like this. Like, okay.
What was the last thing he said to you?
I don't remember. I think he just kind of gave me a dirty look as I walked away.
So you get back. It was supposed to be this big night out. What's going through your mind as you separate, as you part ways with Davi Vanity?
I really don't remember much right after that, up until I found out what happened at Torin. I don't remember the space in between that time frame.
Now, did you know Torin at the time?
Yeah, we were high school buddies. We hung out here and there. Like, I thought she was super cool. So yeah.
So let me bring Torin in at this point. Torin, you're at the concert as well. Was Blood on the Dance Floor on your radar? Was this just an event to go to? Were you fired up to see Davi Vanity?
To be honest, I was going to go to the show no matter what. I went to every show in that venue. And when I had heard who was announced, I always looked up the bands ahead of time, and I was a casual fan once I'd heard their stuff, but it wasn't something where I had gone specifically because it was them. I had gone because of the venue.
Right. And did you know anything about what had happened to your friend Ariel when you came across Davi Vanity that same night?
No, and I suspect he had left her and gone straight to me.
Why do you say that?
Just because of the timeline and because he seemed very frustrated. But, I mean, the timeline of events just makes perfect sense.
So he doesn't get what he wants from Ariel, and then he happens into you, Torin. Tell me how that went down. How did you first see him? What did he say? What did he do?
He was kind of stalking across the crowd, I guess you could say. It wasn't a huge crowd. There were 100 people, maybe. He was kind of stalking across the crowd, and I saw him in what I now know to be a wig above the heads of everybody else. And I was like, oh my god, you're Davi Vanity, hi, you know. It was inside a venue. There was another band on stage playing, so I couldn't hear him really well, and he said, hey, you know, let's take a walk outside, which I was 17 at the time. I was fangirling, and I was like, oh my god, Davi Vanity wants to take a walk with me. That's so exciting.
So you had no idea what had just happened to Ariel?
No.
And you were obviously a little bit starstruck. He says, come on, let's take a walk outside. What did you think was going to happen? What did you think his motivation was?
You know, I thought, like, a lot of the bands that play at that venue, it's such a small venue that a lot of them are still in that stage where they're trying to get to know their fans, you know, trying to really make an impression on their fans. So I had thought, like, oh, you know, we're going to go talk. He's just interacting with fans. That's so cool. I hadn't anticipated anything really
intimate.
No, nothing. I mean, I had anticipated maybe some conversation. Maybe he'd be like, oh, here, have an autograph or something like that.
You're in high school at this moment, right?
Yes.
And here's a guy who's 8, 9, 10 years older. He's a musician. He's relatively famous at the time. And you figure, well, this is great. I'm going to talk to this guy for a little bit. Why would you not?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I was still, it was 2 weeks after my 17th birthday, so I was still in that age where there is a level of naivety.
So you leave with him, and where does he lead you?
He led me down to one of the stores that was just past the venue. I mean, we were only like 100 feet away from the back of the venue, and there were people out smoking. I mean, but then he pulls me back in near an electrical box where there's kind of like an inlet, and I mean, people are still within shouting distance. I mean, certainly I wouldn't have felt threatened. I felt like I was in a safe area.
And what does he do at this point?
At that point, it was, he like pulled me back into this electrical area and, I mean, immediately pushed me down onto my knees and then shoved my head on his crotch. And then he did pump once, and then he did ejaculate onto me.
Did you have any idea that this was coming, or?
No, I mean, and honestly, it happened over the course of about 45 seconds where we were walking along the strip and suddenly this had happened. I mean, I couldn't even process what was happening as fast as it was happening.
You must have just been in shock.
I was definitely in shock. Looking back on it directly afterwards, I did definitely have some signs that I was probably about to pass out, which, I mean, obviously things wouldn't have gotten better from there, so I'm glad I didn't.
When you say you're about to pass out, was that just because you're in shock from what had happened, what he had done to you?
Yeah, I mean, directly afterwards, I mean, my brain was trying its hardest to process that, but that's not something that it processes well. And so everything started sounding real distant, and I started getting that real buzzing in my ears, and I was like, sort of freaking out a little bit.
Did you even comprehend at the time that you had been sexually assaulted?
Absolutely not. It was something where my brain definitely knew the facts of what had just happened, but I think there's a little bit of disassociation going on there, and there's a little bit of you cannot align what you know and who you are, and you can't make those things come together. I knew that it had happened, but I could not process what that meant in relation to me and my life. And actually, it wasn't until I'd gone and talked to an on-again, off-again boyfriend, who happened to be at the show as well, that he said, "Oh my God, you were assaulted. You need to call the police."
Right. What did Davi Vanity say to you after the act?
What he said to me is something I will never forget. I think it scarred me beyond what I could convey here. He said, "That was so good, baby girl. You made me feel so good."
That was so good, baby girl.
Yeah, and I think the part that bothered me the most was that he said, "You made me feel so good."
And you didn't do anything except be there when he forced himself upon you. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There was no participation on my part.
And did he say anything else in terms of... I don't even know what somebody would say after doing something like that. Did he leave it like he would contact you? Did he just leave to go on stage? What happened?
Well, so actually he grabbed my hand and he started walking me back towards the venue, and my brain is still struggling to process what's happening at this point, so I'm just sort of following along. My ears are ringing. I don't really know what's going on, so I'm following him, and he gets me back inside, and he gets one of the shirts, one of his merch shirts or whatever, and he hands it to me, and he's like, "You can go clean up, you know," and
You can go clean up.
yeah, and I'm just sort of like, I mean, I felt dirty. I did go clean up. I did go and I wiped myself off. I was swishing soda in my mouth because I just felt so dirty. And then here now I'm wearing one of his band shirts, and
You leave, ultimately, his company. How did you finally get away from him?
honestly, it was like he handed me the shirt and he just like sent me on my way. He got what he wanted and he was just like, "Okay, bye." And I think he didn't think I was going to say anything. I think he'd done it enough times to know that girls usually didn't.
What does it say to you, and I want to bring Ariel back in, Torin, what does it say to the two of you now looking back that he leaves Ariel after not getting what he wants, and then suddenly he happens into Torin, and he does this to you?
I think it's really disturbing, partially because Ariel and I have carried ourselves with similar looks on several occasions. I think we actually had a fairly similar appearance at the time, and that's sort of weird. But I know we were both young. I think Ariel was 16 and I had just turned 17, so it was, I mean, we were very close in age, and that's a very targeted audience he was after.
It would seem like when he didn't get what he wanted from Ariel, he went after you, Torin.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You run into your on-again, off-again boyfriend who is also at the concert. What do you say to him?
I told him what happened. I told him exactly what happened, maybe in less detail. And he goes, "Oh my God, you've been assaulted, like, you need to call the police. And we didn't actually go straight to the police. I actually went to one of the people that ran the venue, and I had told him what happened, and he actually called the police.
So you went to one of the people at the concert venue, the police arrive. What happens at that point? The police take your statement?
I had been sitting out front. I had been sitting out front of the venue, waiting for the police and for my mom to get there. And I think that's actually when I ran into Ariel, and she told me what had happened to her. Well, she did not specifically in detail tell me what had happened to her, just that something had happened to her.
It happened. And Ariel, what do you remember about Torin's state of mind at the time?
Yeah, I was there when she was telling her boyfriend about it. I was like, oh shit, holy shit, and like she was very upset, and then Torin started crying. I'm like, something really bad has just happened, and I pretty much blame myself for it happening for years. I always felt like that was my fault for it happening to Torin, and I just always felt so bad about it.
Why do you blame yourself, Ariel? Why do you blame yourself?
Well, I'm finally at the point where I'm not blaming myself, but I've always blamed myself because I thought, oh, this is my fault. I approached Davi Vanity, and I didn't give him what he wanted, and he had to go find someone else to get what he wanted, and that's just like horrible mindset. He's a disgusting person, and yeah, but
honestly, if you'd given him what he wanted, he'd have still found somebody else. That was.
He's raped so many people since this has happened, and yeah.
What did you see the police first or your mom first, Torin?
I saw the police, and they took my statement, and I think one of the things that I'll always remember is actually watching the police had gone on stage. I wasn't there. I was told about it. I wasn't inside, but they had gone on stage and actually dragged him out of the venue.
Davi Vanity, Jesus Torres.
Yes.
I wish I got to see that.
He was, as they were pulling him out of the building, he was screaming all sorts of profanities, saying, you know, she's an expletive, she's a liar, yelling. I mean...
So he's trying to re-victimize the victim as they're taking him away.
Yeah.
And what does that do to you when you see this?
I mean, I think more than anything, it actually, I mean, even seeing him being taken away, there was some level of comfort, which I guess it was fake comfort, in watching him being taken away, but even then it feels very threatening because it does make it feel like he's going to get aggressive with you.
You tell the police what happens, they take him into custody, a police report gets filed. What happens? Do you drop the charges? Do the police decide not to proceed with the charges? What went down there?
So we had decided not to press charges. We had actually decided to have the state can press charges. And that's what we had decided to do. They had sent me to the hospital for a rape kit, but once I had told them, you know, I mean, at the time I was 17, and just sexually assaulted. I wasn't worried about preserving evidence. I had gone and I had swished my mouth with like soda. I just felt gross and I had wanted to get that off me. So they had sent me to the hospital for a rape kit, but after telling the doctors what I'd done, they had said, yeah, the odds are we're not going to find anything. And I guess they didn't because he ended up free, so...
Did anybody from the prosecutor's office or the police department sit you down or talk to your mom to explain why they weren't going to pursue the case against Davi Vanity?
Nobody ever sat me down. Honestly, my best guess would be lack of evidence, just because... But, I mean, they certainly felt like you were let down when that happened, because looking back on it, I see all the girls that he's attacked after that situation, and that was in 2009. Everything after that, I mean, was avoidable, so...
What's your biggest regret from that night?
Honestly, my biggest regret that night wasn't that it happened to me. My biggest regret from that night was that I didn't preserve more evidence, that I didn't try harder to preserve the evidence, because like I said, every attack that happened after that night, could have been prevented. And maybe if there was evidence, maybe he'd have gone away. Maybe that could have stopped him from, I mean, it's been 10 years he's been on this pedophilia rampage, so.
How did it impact you from that point on? You were 17 the night this happened.
You know, I did develop anxiety. I did develop clinical OCD, and those have been really hard to deal with. One of the things that it taught me was not to go to the police when something like that happens. I know a lot of people gave me a lot of hate for coming out about my story, and obviously he was just let free, so it did teach me that going to the police doesn't help anything, and later on in life that would come back to bite me in the rear, so.
Now, did you ever go public on social media or talk about this publicly?
No, it was, to be totally honest, since this has been brought up again in my life, I've actually been experiencing a lot of symptoms of maybe I didn't deal with this at the time, and I don't think I did deal with this when it happened. I did a lot of disassociating when it first happened, which, super good way to handle things, and I sort of just disassociated until I could ignore it, and I just did my best to pretend that that wasn't me that it happened to, that, you know, just pretending it hadn't happened.
All these years later, what impact has this had on your life? Do you still get haunted by it?
Yeah, I mean, I still have the OCD. Just since this has been brought back up, it is something where, I mean, this past week, I have been, like, nauseous nonstop. I have, my anxiety and my OCD are at the worst they've been at in a long time. But I mean, I was experiencing symptoms. Those never go away. Those are permanent scars you get, so. I mean, I would say I'm experiencing, that did change me a lot.
What do you hope comes out of this, Torin, and you too, Ariel, by telling your story tonight about Davi Vanity?
Who's first? Okay.
Go ahead, Ariel.
Okay, well, this has always been the most embarrassing story of my life. I've really only told it to close friends, and I am doing this publicly because I will do anything to get a pedophile in jail, and that's what I'm really hoping happens, like, if not forever, at least for a long time.
And Torin, why is it so important for you to come forward with this? Do you find it therapeutic, or is it just a matter of seeing all the stories and realizing that he apparently has done this so many times and gotten away with it? Why is it important for you to go out there, show your face, and tell your story?
Honestly, it is. I mean, I am hoping it'll bring some closure. Obviously, I'm hoping he ends up in jail, and I'm hoping it does bring some closure. But more than anything, I just see the way that my life has been impacted and the way I feel like a lot of my life was taken over by the things he did. And I don't want that to keep happening, and I hear that it is still happening, and I just desperately want to save whatever girls I can from that.
Are you in counseling, Torin? Have you had counseling because of this?
No, for a long time I really just avoided things like that. I will say today I actually signed up for a therapy service, because I am feeling like I probably do need help to deal with this appropriately.
Ariel, what about you? Have you had counseling or therapy?
No, I did have a lot of mental illness as a young adult. I don't know if any of it had to do with that or how much of it or whatever, but no, counseling never really worked for me, but I've been okay the last few years.
And what do you say to Davi Vanity tonight?
Damn. You're a fucking scumbag. Please leave these young girls alone. You're only gonna get yourself in a deeper hole, and I do hope you rot for what you've done to these children.
What about you, Torin?
Honestly, I have nothing to say to him. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a human. He does not deserve anything that comes from me.
I mean, clearly anybody would need help after, therapy, counseling, after going through something like this. We know now that he has continued to be on social media selling merch and having discussions with underage girls, some of whom have recently made plans to actually see him. He's on social media right now. What does that say to you? And what do you say to those young women who are still fawning all over him and want to go meet him?
Well, I mean, he's not sorry. You can tell he's not sorry. And I can tell you that, I don't know, there's so many women that have come forward, and he can't claim that we all lied about our age.
I hope I don't have to tell you that both of you did nothing wrong in all of this, and in that you are victims. I like to use the word survivors, but looking back and knowing what you now know today, is he not only a predator, but a sex addict as well?
I'm going to say yes. But only to his specific... I mean, honestly, I think if Ariel had done exactly what he wanted, he still would have taken whatever opportunity with whatever... I mean, more than a sex addict, I think he's an opportunist.
Do you think it's a matter of just him getting away with this for so long? I mean, there's got to be people in the music business that don't do this. I mean, this can't be... I mean, you hear this, okay, it's a rock star life and whatever, but this takes it to such a horrible, predatory level.
Well, the music industry is super fucked up, and they all, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them, they go into a deeper and deeper hole of doing more and more horrible things. And I think sex addict is too nice of a thing to call him, like, that's just like, oh no, I have an addiction. Like, a lot of us are addicts, but he's a pedophile. He's a pedophile and a rapist, and that's what we call him.
What do you think should happen to him, Ariel?
I mean, I do think jail is a perfect place because they do not take kindly to pedophiles in jail, and I'm sure he will be paid back just the same with similar things happening to him there.
All right, I want you two to stick with me here, and I want to bring in Mal Levy, who was with us last week, if you recall, also a survivor of Dahvie Vanity, who spent a lot of time with, Blood on the Dance Floor and following this story, and has now actually been in contact with law enforcement in her own case. Mal, tell me about that. Thanks for being on the show again. I have a lot of questions for you as well. What happened today in terms of getting in touch with law enforcement about what happened between you and Dahvie Vanity, what Dahvie Vanity did to you?
Well, I actually have been in touch with FBI, and I spoke with an agent today who informed me that if I wanted to press charges, I could actually do that in Orlando or in Florida still, which is where I'm from, where the incident took place when I was underage, because I didn't know that there wasn't a statute of limitations there. I literally had no idea. So I actually did call the Orlando Police Department today, and I did file a report. So SVU will be in touch with me within the next 24 hours, I was told.
Will you file charges against Dahvie Vanity based upon what happened to you when you were underage?
Heck yeah, man. This guy is done. Like, I'm tired of this. Like, I mean, I have been talking to girls, survivors, all week, nonstop. My inboxes are flooded, which I'm happy about. And their stories have been breaking my heart. I cry with these girls. I'm up all night trying to figure out what I can do, how to help. And I would like to do whatever it takes at this point, because this is wrong. This is not okay. This has been going on for longer than 10 years. I mean, and the thing about this specific case that we were, obviously just watching, when these girls contacted, they reached out to me, and when I started hearing, about the story, I said, "Was this in Colorado?" And they said, and Ariel said, "Yeah, how did you know?" And I said, "I have your police report, because Dahvie, in 2009, a couple weeks later, I saw him in LA before I joined the tour with him, he told me about the incident. He pulled me aside to tell me. I don't think he told me that he went to jail for it, but he did say, oh, some, bitch in Colorado. He said some awful stuff, lied, and, she failed a rape kit, so she's full of it, but it's whatever. He was just being, crass about it.
And at the time, you didn't know that he was talking about Torin.
No, I had no idea of, either of the girls' names. I didn't even know until they reached out to me that there were 2 girls that night. I had no clue. And the way that he explained what happened was it just seemed like it was easy for you to be like, oh man, like that sucks. Like, I'm sorry that happened to you. He was the victim in the case.
What did he say? So you were with him after the incident with Ariel and with Torin. What did he, and it got some attention, the fact that he was questioned in connection with the alleged sexual assault. How did he characterize it to you?
Well, he just kind of said that, some girl was trying to get with him and they kind of hooked up. He didn't specify what happened. He just said that they kind of hooked up, and she said that she was like 19 or something like that. Basically just, calling this girl a liar. And said, that was pretty much it. I didn't really know the full details about what happened, but I think he was only letting me know because he was asking me to go on tour with him. So I think he knew that somewhere, sometime, someone might bring that up on that tour.
Torin, how does it make you feel to hear that Dahvie Vanity characterized his assault of you in this way?
I mean, it's not surprising. He was not only a serial rapist and a serial pedophile, but obviously he was a serial liar. He did a lot of manipulation, and I think it's coming out how much manipulation he did, so not surprised.
Mm-hmm. Ariel, I want to go to you for a second. You heard what Mal Levy just said, that he totally blew this off as it was some fanatical fangirl who blew it out of proportion. How does that sit with you?
I pretty much was sure that's exactly what he said. Like, when I was messaging her, I'm like, I've always wanted to know what he said about this. And I was like, yep, that's exactly what I thought. So, I mean, I just expected it.
And what made the two of you reach out to Mal? Torin, start with you.
I actually didn't reach out to her initially. Ariel had contacted me and told me that she was doing stuff with, with you, obviously. And that sort of gave me an opportunity to believe that something would actually be done about this person. Because after 10 years, you resign yourself to this idea that nothing's ever going to be done. You just believe that this man is just going to keep walking free and keep doing what he's doing. So when we finally had that opportunity to stop that, I took that as soon as I could.
Torin, did you think he was going to get away with this forever? And what was it like for you walking around every day knowing that this guy had done this to you and he was not going to face justice for it?
You know, it's one of those things where you don't really think about these sort of effects, but I mean, a lot of the interactions I have with men in general are colored by that. I mean, he's been out walking around for 10 years, and how many times has he done this? Like, I don't know any man I meet. I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know what you've done, and I don't know that you'd have been put away if you had done it. So, obviously, there's a loss of security there. There's a loss of any sort of trust in men, so...
Any guy at all. Ariel, why was it so important for you to reach out to Mal?
Well, I just found out about this whole thing on Friday. Like, I saw a Pastel Bell video posted to Facebook. I'm like, what the fuck? This asshole is still at it. I can't believe it. Someone's like, oh, Chris Hansen's doing a thing. Get in contact. So, I figured that'd be the easiest way. I found her Instagram, and I just really, really wanted to put a stop to what he's still doing to minors.
Pastel Bell, if anybody doesn't know, is a YouTube content creator who's been following the story and has really done a great job in many ways. In fact, I had a conversation with her today, and she has been in contact with another FBI agent who I'm going to speak with very soon, and some other victims in Ohio. And there are at least 2 cases now being investigated by the Cincinnati Police Department. So we've got the Mal Levy, your case in Ohio, or in Orlando, Florida rather, 2 in Ohio, and the cases are building.
I think there's 4 now total, to
Yeah.
my knowledge. There might be more. I'm not sure.
Now, give me a sense, after you appeared on the show last week, of the volume of young women who reached out to you about this, both as potential victims and as young women who said, "Hey, you're very brave, or it's very important that you came out to talk about this."
Oh wow! So I'm not exaggerating at all. My inboxes on literally Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, email, and even my phone number somehow got out. I think I posted it by accident somewhere, but all of those inboxes have been flooded every single day. Like every other minute, I think I get a new message. So I've got literally hundreds of messages every day now. It started off with 5 or 6, and then it was growing and growing. And it's a combination. It's primarily information about Davi and a ton of survivors' stories that I've been reading. And then there's also just instances and examples, people that know him, people that are still in contact with him. And then there's also girls that just need advice about, their experiences with other, abusers, other predators, and they just need somebody to talk to. So it's been a crazy, crazy amount of people. So I'm really happy to help, of course. It's a lot, but I'm really glad that I'm able to help people right now.
I did an interview with Jeffree Star, the influencer, makeup mogul, who toured with Davi Vanity back in the day. What did you think of what Jeffree had to say?
I had mixed feelings about it personally. Jeffree, I think the first half of the interview was the most productive, because I think that the information that we really wanted to hear from Jeffree was, why he said what he said back then and why he retracted his statements, and then also just what he thinks about Davi as a person. And ultimately, Jeffree agrees, because Jeffree does know that Davi is a predator, and he agrees that Davi needs to be in prison. And that's really what we wanted out of it. So,
well, I think, me looking at it, and I look at the big picture here, and obviously there are YouTube content creators, citizen journalists who like to get into the minutia of it all and pick it apart. And by doing an interview like that with Jeffree Star, it creates opportunities for other drama channels to exist and do what they do. But in the big picture, it would seem what Jeffree had to say was important, in that he does want to see justice served on Davi Vanity. He did talk about mistakes he made. He clarified an incident videotape where a guy was drunk from the night before. You hear people interpret that tape in many different ways. What Jeffree said in the interview seemed to make sense to me. Now, obviously, you don't know because you weren't there. I wasn't there. Only Jeffree was there, and his companion at the time. But it seems to me that it was critical in terms of moving the case forward and saying, okay, look, we're paying attention to this, and here's a guy who doesn't have to say anything, but he did, and he's done other interviews as well.
And I think that it's really important to mention all of that, but also, there are a lot of people that are upset, and I understand why. Realistically, at the end of the day, this is not a drama channel. This is not a drama situation. This is a literal criminal investigation. So, do I think Jeffree saw some more stuff? Potentially, yes. But at the end of the day, he's not on trial for this right now. This is about Davi, so we need to focus on that right now. And that's the most important thing we can do at this very moment. There's a lot of bad stuff that was going on back then in that time frame. I was there for a lot of it. I've experienced a lot of it, and I'm sure Jeffree was around for a lot of it. But we need to just really focus at the serious issue at hand at the moment. And I hope that nobody twists my words and thinks that I'm defending anybody. I'm just trying to keep it focused right now.
What do you say, Mal, to Ariel and Torrin tonight?
I want to thank you girls so much for coming forward because I know it's a hard thing to do. You're extremely brave, and I feel for you. I mean, it's crazy because I know part of your story prior to even, meeting you like this. So I mostly just want to say thank you for coming forward, and I am so incredibly sorry that, he did this to you. It's horrible.
Ariel, what do you want people to know most tonight as we wrap up?
What do you mean by that?
About this story, what happened to you, about what Davi Vanity has done and is out there doing today. What do you want people to know most about what you saw and his situation today and what should happen to him?
Well, mostly to the young girls who are still a fan of him. Like, he is a predator. He doesn't just like you for who you are. He's after something. You're not mature for your age. I'm sorry, but that's just what they're going to say. And to stay away from him. He's a creep. I don't really know what else to say,
Well said. Torrin, what do you say to everybody watching tonight about your experience with Davi Vanity, what this did to you and what should happen to him?
I mean, I definitely think this is something that has the potential to mess people up. It's not just me. It's a lot of girls that have been messed up and could still be messed up. So I definitely do think this man needs to go to prison, if you can even call him a man. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to see something actually happen to him.
All right. Torrin, Ariel, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. Mal, where do you see this going from here? You've not only been able to talk to our two guests tonight, but you've talked to so many others. We have other people waiting in the wings who traveled with Davi, who were victimized by Davi, and they'll be talking to us as we move ahead in this investigation. But what has surprised you most about what's happened since you first spoke out about this?
What's funny is I never thought I was going to be this involved in this. I didn't know what to expect, but I'm amazed. But I'm not super surprised that there are more women that are reaching out, but I'm more so just amazed by the volume, because I mean this has gone from 6 to 21 to hundreds. And that is extremely disturbing. I literally am referring to this as like the pedophile Ted Bundy, and I think that all we can do right now is gather our strength, and anyone that has information that could help should report it. And speaking out on YouTube is not, again, this is not a drama channel. The reason why we do this is to get information out there, and a big reason is because there are still girls that are being targeted by him, and this is helping them to see that. That is why we're doing this. So I wanted to make that clear.
There are at least 2 cases of 16-year-old girls now under investigation, not the girls under investigation, but Davi Vanity under investigation for trying to solicit these underage girls online within the last several months.
Yes.
As we speak. It appears law enforcement is finally closing in after a decade or more on Davi Vanity.
Yeah, also, I've had a couple of girls contact me, not just Torrin, that have tried to report him, that have had failed attempts with it, and I realize that can happen in many cases like this. I do understand that, and it's horrible, and I'm so sorry that happened to you, if that happened to you, but we need to work together right now. And if you have reported him and failed with that in the past, I do want to encourage you to do so again. And if you haven't but feel like you need to, I encourage you to reach out. And if you need anything, you can reach. There's so many people that are here to help you right now, and we all encourage you to reach out to us if you need anything.
Mal Levy, thank you very much for having a seat with me tonight. Ariel, thank you. Torrin, thank you very much. We will continue our investigation into Davi Vanity. As you all know, this has been a place where we also investigate Onision, James Greg Jackson, the YouTube psycho brat from Washington State, who has been on a rampage lately against me and anybody else who dares to to suggest that he has broken the law and abused young women along the way and bullied people and harassed people on his YouTube channel. That investigation continues too. Now, and I've said this before, it is a very active investigation, and it is frustrating because it does take time for the FBI and the Pierce County Sheriff's Department to do what they need to do. And I also want to say that, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, things have slowed down on a number of investigations. But I have talked to people involved in this case again this week, and it is very much moving forward. So we are expecting to see some results in the very near future, and you will hear it here first, I guarantee it. So thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it very much. We will continue all these investigations. In the meantime, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you next week on Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. Take care. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Have a Seat with Chris Hansen for what will be, no doubt, one of the most analyzed, scrutinized, and perhaps criticized interviews that you'll see this year. As you know, we've been investigating the case of Davi Vanity, Jesus Torres, who is accused, although not officially by law enforcement, but by many survivors, as many as 24, and we think maybe in the hundreds, perhaps thousands, of sexual assault involving women who were young at the time, 12, 13, 14 years old. One of the issues that's come up throughout all of this is who was around Davi Vanity when some of this was happening, and what did they know? And people are speaking out about it. And my guest today is someone who possesses a very unique position in pop culture and business in the makeup world, as an influencer, as a YouTube star in his own right, who was a music performer at one time and was on the same stage as Davi Vanity. And I'm very pleased to have Jeffree Star join me this afternoon from his home in California. Jeffree, how you doing with the pandemic and everything?
Hello, Chris. First of all, thank you so much for having me today.
My pleasure.
It's been crazy to have all the businesses shut down and everything. It's been a lot, but we're holding down the fort over here at Jeffree Star Cosmetics. And we're doing all right.
Excellent. Excellent. You know, because you monitor social media and your people do, just like I do, that everybody has an opinion about you, this case, me, and this interview. And I've had suggestions and people tell me how to conduct this interview, and my philosophy on conducting interviews is to be a good listener. So that is exactly what I'm going to do with you today. Your initial thoughts on what has surfaced in the last several months on Davi Vanity. I mean, how do you characterize what you've heard, and what do you think of it all?
So when I quit music, I really quit everything, meaning I didn't really talk to any of those people ever again until this date. So it wasn't shocking because Davi's always been horrible, and we'll dive into all of that. I want to answer everyone's questions today, but I was happy that people are finally getting a voice, because back in the day, I don't think that a lot of people took things like this serious. The subject matter that we're going to discuss today and everything that he's been accused of, people back in the day did not take it as serious as they do now, which is so horrible. So I'm glad that things are really coming to light. And at the end of the day, the goal is for him to be sitting in a prison cell. So I'm ready to dive in. You know what I mean?
Well, take me back to those days in, the mid to late 2005, 2010, 2012. What was that music scene like, and how did you get into it? What was happening in that scene?
It was very punk rock, and what I mean by that, it was a very crass and offensive culture, whether it was electronic music or dance. We were in this, I call it the MySpace culture, because that was kind of the time frame. And things were just very different than how they were now, and it was very rock and roll. You know, we did a lot of things for attention, a lot of things to be offensive, and me and Davi first met because I believe that he was actually a fan of me. And I remember, since we've spoken, I've dug through all my memories of when I first met that person, how it all even transpired. And Chris, he was a fan of me, and I remember him almost being kind of like trying to copy things that I did. And when he started music, it was because of my MySpace music, I believe.
And who was Jeffree Star back in those days? How would you describe yourself?
Oh my God. Very offensive, loved attention, only child, and it was my mission to make people talk, whether it was in a positive way or a negative way. I just loved attention. So thinking about that person now, I don't even know who that person is, but yeah, it's been I'm just thinking about all these memories, and it's just like it was really wild times, and a lot of it is not okay, and some of the things and things that I've said, like we've discussed, like I've said some really crazy stuff. So yeah, I regret a lot of those times, but I think it's made me who I am today, and I appreciate and I'm proud of who I am now, you know.
So you were what, 19 or so when you got into the music scene? 18, 19 in about what, 07, 08?
Exactly. 2006, I did my first song with a group called Hollywood Undead. That was very big on MySpace. Yeah, and then I went up all the way until 2013 when I quit. So it was a really crazy time in my life.
And describe how you actually met Davi Vanity, Jesus Torres.
It was through shows at like electronic shows or rock shows. When I was touring with other bands, him and his friends would start to come to the shows, and we met, I think, the first time in Florida when I was playing with some of my old MySpace music, and he really came up to me as kind of like a fan, and that's what I remember. And then when I saw him next, he had a band. It was called Blood on the Dance Floor, and he was starting to do shows. And I think in hopes of touring and working with the kind of crowd that we were in.
Ultimately, you shared a stage with Davi Vanity and Blood on the Dance Floor. What was that like?
So here's the thing. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Blood on the Dance Floor and Jeffree Star, the musician, did a lot of tours separately. We only ever toured twice together. And people may know this or may not know this about me. I don't drink. I know there's conspiracies that I secretly drink. I am not a partier. So they were very into partying, drinking, alcohol. And my crew was not into that. We were stoners, and we didn't hang out a lot. So, but sharing a stage and being on tour, it was different times, and a lot of the people that opened for us, opening bands, we were all very similar in that we had offensive lyrics. It was very sexual. It was very about partying and just being crazy. So it just kind of fit. But when we were, and what do you mean like by on stage? Because should we talk about the infamous clip that is going around everywhere?
Yeah, let's get to that, because that seems to be, what is on a lot of people's minds. And we talked earlier about everybody having their own opinion on this, and everybody wanting to hold you to a certain level of responsibility for what Davi Vanity allegedly did. So there's a clip. You're on stage with him. He grabs a girl who's identified as being 13 years old and for sure underage, and he makes a sexual move. I guess you could say humping or grabbing her. That way.
So
people want to say because you were on stage.